Okay, we on the last 3 chapters. You ready? Let's go. Chapter 38. Ashley gasped for breath as Ethan lunged on top of her, his teeth shining like fangs. For an instant, both her mind and body felt paralyzed. Her diaphragm burned as though it was on fire. Her back had smacked the ground so hard that all the air had been forced from her lungs. Ethan cackled a split the still night like the screech of a wild man. "You think you can kill me?" he shouted. Her chest heaved as she gulped in precious oxygen. When her thoughts began to clear, Ashley's first concern was for her child. She had to save her baby, pray the little one hadn't been injured. Ethan's cold blue eyes had turned dark, as black as his soul. "I can crack your skull like an egg," he warned her. She knew his words were true. It would be even easier for him to crush her windpipe. She had to get him off of her. Squirming, she tried to buck her hips, but her ex-husband held her tight. He pinned her shoulders to the ground. "You're going to be real sorry now." Desperate to break his hold, she raked her left hand across the dirt, striking something solid. Her fingers curled around the stone that rimmed the edge of the fire pit. Her ex-husband's face pressed closer. His smirking lips were inches from her own. The sickly sweet odor of his breath singed her nostrils. "You ain't never felt no pain as bad as what I'm fixing to give you," he said. Ashley slammed a stone into the side of Ethan's head. He cried out in agony as he toppled to her right. Blood streamed down his temple. She needed to get up onto her feet, to race to her car and lock herself inside. She scrambled backwards and wriggled her legs out from under his weight. Before she could stand, Ethan caught her left ankle, his grip as strong as steel. She writhed and she kicked, trying to break free. Her right heel crashed against her ex-husband's face. The bone in his nose snapped. He cried out again as more blood erupted from his face and ran down his chin. Ashley jerked her leg from his grasp. This was her chance to flee, her only chance to survive. She jumped to her feet and flew toward the parking area. Footsteps pounded the ground behind her. Ethan was stronger, stood taller, and possessed a longer stride. Panic surged through her heart as she realized he was gaining fast. She wouldn't make it to the car. His arms cinched around her waist and she felt herself falling forward. Ethan tackled her to the ground. She landed on her forearms. The force jarred her bones, her face inches from the dirt. The weight of his body bound her hips and her legs. Ashley was trapped again. This time, she feared she wouldn't be able to escape. Pain shot through her scalp as Ethan yanked her hair, jerking her head back. "I was going to make you suffer a real long while," he told her. "Had plans to drag you out for weeks. You're still going to die slow, but now it's going to be today." Ashley heard a noise ahead of her, a low rumble. A pair of headlights flashed on. The sudden brightness stung her eyes. She realized a car had rolled into the parking area under the cover of darkness. "Stop! Police!" a voice shouted. "Put your hands up!" She recognized the voice. It was Detective Lansing. Relief fluttered just outside the edges of her grasp. A part of her was glad Lansing had arrived, but another part wondered whether the detective was prepared for what he walked into. Ethan scooped her up off the ground, allowing her to stand. His right arm clamped around her neck like a vice. She struggled in his arm, but each move just tightened her ex-husband's grip. "I'll break her neck," Ethan yelled. "You don't want to do that," Lansing told him. "I ain't got nothing to lose." "You said it." "If I die, she's going with me." Ashley wanted to shout out for Lansing to shoot, but she had no doubt that Ethan would follow through on his threats to break her neck. If he killed her, her baby would die as well. "Let's talk about this," the detective said. "We can work something out." "Ain't but one deal I'm making. Get in the light so I can see you." Lansing stepped forward into the glow of the headlights. His weapon was aimed at Ethan. "I know you don't really want to hurt her. You don't know nothing about me. I know that deep down you love Ashley. Let her go." She felt her ex-husband's body tense, his left arm tighten around her waist. She knew the detective was trying to negotiate, but his words seemed to make Ethan more determined to kill her. "She got me locked up," her ex-husband said, hatred in his voice. "Not because she wanted to," the detective said. "She was scared. She just did what her lawyers told her to do." Ashley had wanted Ethan to be sentenced to prison for the rest of his life. She realized Lansing was looking for any excuse he could find to persuade her ex-husband to let her go. "That don't matter none. Here's what we're going to do. You're going to toss your gun over this way, real gentle-like. Let her go first, and then I'll give you my weapon." "Nah, it don't work that way," Ethan told him. "You're going to give me your gun. You don't do what I say, I'm going to break Ashley's neck. Then you can shoot me, and we'll be done." The detective hesitated. "It doesn't have to end like that. There's a chance for you to make things right. I can talk to the judge and tell him that you cooperated. He'll go easy on you." Her ex-husband had no plans to return to prison. Ashley was certain. She knew he'd rather die first, and he was determined that she die with him. "You got 5 seconds, then she's dead." Ethan started his countdown. 1, 2. "Okay," Lansing said. "Just don't hurt her." Bending his knees, the detective tossed his gun toward her ex-husband. "You step back now," Ethan said. Lansing obeyed, staying within a circle of light. Ethan shoved her forward, but kept his arms fastened around her torso. He inched them both towards the gun. As she hobbled in front of her ex-husband, Ashley's thoughts jumped to shame. She imagined her brother lying in the operating room, fighting for his life, knowing that he may never walk again. Then she thought about Steve, who she found out was planning to be married later this summer. She remembered Ray. Although he helped Ethan, he regretted it in the end. And there was Dr. Fisher. He'd been so kind to her after she lost her daughter. Neil, who could have had a wonderful life ahead of him. And Cherie. The woman may not have even known that Brett was living with Ashley, and if she had, she still didn't deserve to die. All of Ethan's victims had deserved to live, unlike him. Ashley knew this was the end for her as well. Once her ex-husband picked up Detective Lansing's weapon, he would kill her, her baby, and the detective. After that, he'd murder her father and her brothers. She couldn't let that happen. She refused to let her ex-husband hurt another innocent soul. Ashley swung her right leg as hard as she could. Her toe collided with the detective pistol. The weapon flew across the ground into the darkness. "Stupid bitch!" her ex-husband yelled in her ear as his arms dropped from her waist. Ethan's fist slammed into her jaw. Pain sliced through her face. Knocked sideways, Ashley tumbled to the ground. A dark haze clouded her vision as a loud ringing echoed in her head. The sky, trees, and earth swirled around her. She couldn't tell which direction was up and which was down. The taste of acid flooded her mouth. She struggled to hang on to consciousness. Closing her eyes, she forced herself to breathe in deep. Her jaw throbbed. She pressed her palms against the ground, trying to regain her sense of balance. The ringing in her ears began to fade, the noise replaced by the clack of blows, fists smashing bone. Ashley opened her eyes. Ethan and Detective Lansing battled back and forth, volleying for position, both landing and then receiving punch after punch. Her ex-husband was stronger, a walking wall of muscle, but he already sustained a broken nose and a gash on his temple. Lansing was quicker, dodging Ethan's fist, but she knew the detective couldn't evade her ex-husband for much longer. Pushing herself up, she tried to stand. The world began to spin before her eyes again. Ashley dropped to her knees and crawled toward the direction where she had kicked Lansing's gun. She had to find it. Once outside the illumination of the detective's headlights, her eyesight dimmed. She stretched her hands forward, sweeping them across the ground, searching for the gun. If she didn't locate the weapon soon, she feared her ex-husband would kill Lansing. A guttural moan rang out behind her. She looked back over her shoulders. Ethan had Lansing pinned to the ground, his fist pummeling the detective's head. Her time was up. If she didn't find the gun fast, Lansing would die. An image popped into her mind. She remembered seeing her own pistol lying between the fire pit and the edge of the bluff. Ashley pushed herself up to her feet. With her balance still off, she half stumbled, half ran across the parking area towards the fire pit. As she neared the limestone slab, her night vision returned. She spotted the black silhouette of her Smith & Wesson near the rim of the cliff. She prayed she'd have time to save Lansing. Footsteps boomed behind her. She knelt beside the gun and then glanced back. Ethan barreled towards her. As Ashley's fingers closed around the pistol, her ex-husband hit her from behind. Their bodies crashed to the ground at the edge of the bluff, inches from tumbling over. She landed on her stomach with Ethan on top of her, her right hand pinned beneath her abdomen. To her left, the earth cut away, plunging into the valley below. One wrong move could send them both plummeting to their death. He lifted his body just enough to roll her onto her back. She met his gaze for what she felt would be the last time. His soulless eyes appeared swollen. Blood caked his face. His lips parted in a wicked smile. "Time for you to die, girl," her ex-husband spat out. Ethan's fingers clamped around her throat. She gasped as her source of air cut off. Digging her fingernails of her left hand into Ethan's forearm, she squirmed beneath the weight of his body. She wriggled her right hands up between them. Her premonition flooded her memory, proving true once again. This night would change the lives of her family forever. Ashley shoved the barrel of her pistol under Ethan's chin. Her ex-husband's swollen eyes widened as the cold steel of the muzzle pressed against his skin. His gaze locked with hers. The startling expression spreading across his face screamed that he realized he just lost the game he always thought he would win. His fingers clenched tighter around her throat, depriving her lungs of oxygen. Time seemed to freeze as the horde of memories rushed through Ashley's mind. The day she met Ethan, the day they eloped, the day he'd thrown her into the pit, the entwining of their lives had culminated in this singular moment. Ashley closed her eyes and squeezed the trigger. Ethan's head exploded. Yes! Yes, Ashley! Okay. I'm so happy. Okay, chapter 39. Blood and bone and brain matter splattered Ashley's face and hair. The blast from the gunshot struck her eardrums. The sound, similar to the high-pitched siren blaring inside the tunnel, filled her head. She coughed out bits of her ex-husband's flesh as she fought to catch her breath. The realization that she had inhaled skin and blood made her stomach churn. Her lungs burned as though they'd been scorched by fire, and her jaw still ached. But she was alive. Yeah, Ashley. And though she suffered knocks and bruises, she believed with all her heart that her baby would survive as well, that her little one was healthy. The weight of Ethan's body flattened her to the ground. She opened her eyes, but her visions was limited by the film of blood and tissue stuck to her eyelids. The remnants of her ex-husband. She killed him, but she had no choice. If she hadn't been able to get her pistol, if she lacked the strength to pull the trigger, both she and her child would be dead now. Ethan's limp fingers were still coiled around her neck. Repulsed by his touch, she shoved his body upward. She wriggled her legs and torso out from beneath him, scooting away from the edge of the bluff. The corpse rolled off her and tumbled over the side of the cliff. Ethan's twisted game was over, and she had won. Her ex-husband would never be able to hurt her or her family again. Except for the fact there was no sense of glory in her victory, only sadness. Grief for the innocent lives that had been taken, and sorrow that her ex-husband had chosen a murderous path. She thought about Shane, wondered whether he was still in surgery. Her heart ached for her younger brother. Will he be able to walk again, or will he be bound to a wheelchair for the rest of his life? Ashley scrubbed her face with the tail of her shirt. A metallic taste lingered on her tongue. Ethan's blood. As soon as she had wiped away the sticky film from her eyelids, enabling her to see, she sprang to her feet and ran back to the parking area. Detective Lanson lay crumpled on the ground in front of his car. Blood marked Lanson's face. His nose appeared broken and his jaw was bruised and swollen. She checked for a pulse. He was alive but unconscious. She needed to call for help, but her phone had sailed over the cliff in Ethan's pocket. The door of the detective's sedan was unlocked. Ashley climbed inside and grabbed the microphone for the police radio. "Hello, my name is Ashley Hope, and I need help. A police detective has been injured. He's unconscious and needs an ambulance." She paused, her fingers still pressing the talk button, feeling the weight of her next words. "And another man is dead. We're located at Laurel's Bluff. Please hurry." With her ears still ringing, she had to focus hard to understand the voice responding to her on the radio. But her call had been heard and help was on the way. She rushed back to Lanson's side. Before leaving the hospital in Cedar View, she texted the detective telling him she was driving to the Bluff and that she believed Ethan might also be headed there. "You were right." Assuming Lanson would be asleep at 4 in the morning, she never expected him to show up. She just wanted him to know where she'd gone in case something went wrong. I'm proud of you, Ashley. You made me proud. In case she never came back. Briarwood was a 2-hour drive from Metler Ridge. How had the detective reached the Bluff so fast? Don't do it. Lanson began to stir. His eyes opened and she saw his mouth move, but his voice sounded muffled. She wasn't sure what he said. He winced as she helped him sit up. "An ambulance will be here in just a few minutes," she told him. He nodded, holding his rib. "Did he get away?" The detective's voice was faint compared to the buzzing in her ears, but she understood him, and she knew he was talking about her ex-husband. "Ethan's dead," she said. "I shot him." Reality hit her as she said the words out loud. She had taken a human's life. Tears streamed down her face, not because she mourned her ex-husband, but because she felt something had changed deep within her, like she lost a sense of innocence. Ethan was a murderer. He deserved to die for his crime. Although she was glad it had been at her hands rather than someone else, she wished it had never happened at all. Lanson met her gaze. She could see sympathy in his eyes. "You had to," he told her. "He would have killed us both." She knew the detective was right. If she had aimed her pistol at another part of Ethan's body, simply wounding him instead, he would have thrown her off the cliff, off the side of the bluff. Killing him was the only way to save the lives of her child and Detective Lanson. "I'm really glad you got my text," she said. "If you hadn't shown up, I don't even want to think about what Ethan would have done to me. Something tells me you still would have come out on top." She attempted a smile, but the action sent a wave of pain radiating through her jaw. "How did you get here so fast?" "It was your tip about Janet Porter and Robin Lynch. The Laurel County Sheriff offered to let me team up with him to see what all we could find. We just wrapped up things at Robin's house. I was halfway back to Briarwood when your text came through." Ashley was amazed at the detective's dedication. He'd gone up out of his way to ensure the safety of her brother's girlfriends. "I can't believe you traveled 2 hours just to test a theory," she said. "Yeah, but it was worth it. You were right." A bolt of fear hit her. Had her ex-husband taken another life? She knew Robin was okay because she visited Shane in the hospital, but Ashley hadn't seen Janet. Had Kyle kept her death a secret? Did Ethan? "Both women are fine," he assured her. "Thanks to you, they got out of town just in time." She was relieved to hear that no harm had come to her brother's girlfriends. The detective continued. "We got to Janet's trailers first. First, Ethan had kicked in her back door. He ransacked the place. He also left something behind, a Buster Grape bubblegum wrapper on her porch. What about Robin? He broke a window to get into her place, tossed her place too. Both women owe their lives to you. Instead of taking credit, Ashley again felt a pang of guilt. If she hadn't married Ethan, the lives of Janet and Robin wouldn't have been in jeopardy in the first place. She was just thankful she figured out her ex-husband's plan before he could strike. The detective looked at her, appreciation in his eyes. "You've got great instincts, Nancy Drew," he said, with what appeared to be effort to smile in spite of his swollen jaw. "And you obviously know how to handle a weapon. You should think about joining the force." Although she appreciated the compliment, Ashley couldn't even consider the idea right now. She needed time. The wail of emergency sirens echoed across the mountain. Ashley looked toward the east, past the edge of the bluff. The first ray of morning light broke over the horizon. A new day had begun. It would also mark the start of a new life for Ashley and her family. She realized the journey ahead would be long and the road to recovery, especially for Shane, would be difficult. But she knew that together they would make it. They would draw strength from each other, and she knew just how they would begin. Chapter 40, last chapter. 2 weeks later. The plastic dispenser squealed at Ashley as Ashley rolled the length of packing tape up onto the cardboard box, sealing it closed. The last of her things, a stack of winter sweaters and a pair of leather boots, were tucked inside. She took a final look around the master bedroom. It felt strange to be back in the house where she once dreamed of raising a family. A sense of sadness hung in the air, as if the walls had absorbed the pain she and Brett had endured. Her ex-fiancé had purchased most of the furniture when they moved into their home on Marigold Court, including a bed, dresser, and other matching pieces. He sent her an email offering to divide the furnishings, but she declined. Everything Brett had brought, she wanted him to keep. That's right. The only thing remaining in the house that belonged to Ashley were memories. A few of them were happy. Kyle appeared in the doorway. He had a half smile plastered on his face. She knew her brother was glad she found out Brett's affair before her wedding, but along with his desire to see her move on with her life, Kyle had also expressed his sympathy for her broken heart. "This is the last box," she told him, hearing a note of melancholy in her voice. He nodded. "Let me take it down to the truck." She appreciated Kyle's help, was thankful that her bond with her family had been strengthened. Every day for the last 2 weeks, Ashley had sat at Shane's bedside at Cedar View Medical Center. The road to his recovery would be a long one, but his doctor was optimistic. Her younger brother was strong and determined. With continued physical therapy, there was a chance that he would walk again. After Shane's release from the hospital earlier that morning, she and Kyle and 2 of their cousins had picked up a U-Haul truck to transport her meager belongings to the trailer on the rear portion of her father's property. The mobile home was old and small, and the air conditioner only worked half the time, but it felt like a good place to start over. And there was a second bedroom she could decorate as a nursery. She was especially grateful for the health of her baby. The doctor had assured her that the pregnancy was advancing normally and that everything was fine. No harm had come to the child. Ashley trudged down the stairs and headed for the kitchen. She stared at the white envelope that bore her name lying on the island's counter. It was a letter from Brett. She noticed the envelope when she first arrived at the house, but she hadn't wanted to open it, not in front of Cal and her cousins. Brett had texted and emailed her several times, expressing his desire to repair their relationship. Although she read each message, she hadn't responded. That's it. She only texted him once earlier in the week to let him know she'd be picking up her things today and that she wouldn't be taking his furniture. Expecting her ex-fiance to be here when she arrived, she'd been surprised to find the house empty. She had planned to take this opportunity to tell him he would soon be a father, but the news would have to wait. The announcement needed to be made in person, not on the phone or in an email. She wondered if Brett had finally accepted the fact that their relationship was over. Oh, Brett, you better not be another Ethan. If this was his goodbye, she picked up the envelope and tore open the flap. Okay, Ashley, I know that I've hurt you and I'm deeply sorry. My hope is that one day you will be able to forgive me. I still believe that we could have a wonderful life together. I'm headed to Florida with my parents. Dad thought that a golf getaway would do me good. We'll be back in 4 weeks. I hope that when I return, we can meet up and talk. I still love you, and I always will. Please consider giving me a second chance. Brett. Tears welled in Ashley's eyes as she crumpled the letter and tossed it in the trash. There was no going back, only forward. Yeah, Ashley. She turned around and saw Kyle standing between the open kitchen and family room. She wondered how long he'd been watching her. From the compassionate look in his eyes, it had been long enough for him to know she read Brett's message. We're ready to go, he told her. She nodded. I'll see you at home later. As Kyle disappeared into the foyer, Ashley opened her purse. She removed the house key from her key ring and placed it onto the center of the kitchen island. It was official. This was no longer her home. In her heart, she wasn't sure it ever really had been. Ashley left through the front door, locking it behind her. She waved at Kyle and watched a U-Haul pull out of the driveway before heading to her sedan. She glanced at the clock on her dashboard, 2:37 p.m. She had an appointment to keep. Ashley sipped her herbal tea as she watched the traffic whirl by through the window of the coffee shop. The crowd had thinned for the afternoon, and she had her choice of tables. The corner location combined a nice view with a fair amount of privacy. Staring out at the clear day, the memory of her first time in the shop floated into her mind. A tinge of sadness hit her. She and Brett had discovered best beans the week they moved to Briarwood, when their relationship had still been on track, before Cherie. The old-fashioned bell of the entrance door dinged, and she looked up to see Detective Lansing striding into the shop. He nodded at her and smiled before heading to the counter to place his order. She glanced at her phone perched on a table. Lansing had arrived early, but of course, she had as well. Hello, Detective, she said as he slipped into the chair opposite her. She noticed he still had faint bruises visible around his nose. Other than that, he looked no worse for wear from his fight with Ethan. Don't you think it's time you started calling me Daniel? His eyes sparkled. Will you still call me Nancy Drew? He laughed. The name fits. Ethan Barrett might still be on the run if you hadn't lured him to the bluff. Surprised, Ashley stared at Lansing. She never confided that she tricked her ex-husband into following her to the bluff. She only told Detective that it was a location from their past, that she suspected Ethan would be heading there. After taking statements from both the detective and Ashley, the police had determined Ethan's death to be a clear case of self-defense, which it was. If they suspected she had lured her ex-husband to the bluff, they might not have believed her. But Lansing had lived through the ordeal along with her. He was well aware she had no choice but to pull the trigger. How did you know? She asked. He smiled. I didn't for sure, not until just now. But it's what I would have done. Okay. All right, Detective Lansing. Getting Ethan to follow her to the bluff was the only thing Ashley could have done to save her family. But she still wished it had ended a different way, with her ex-husband in custody or on death row. The fact that she'd taken the life of another human being, no matter the circumstances, will haunt her for as long as she lived. We finally got word back from the medical examiner on Neil Wilson, Lansing said. The official ruling is suicide. Ashley was glad she would no longer be considered a suspect in the death of Ethan's cousin. What about Ray, she asked. I know Ethan's confession to me is considered hearsay, but have they made a decision yet? The detective shook his head. Not yet. Alabama head HP hasn't found any definite evidence that they can use to point to homicide. The lack of clues didn't surprise her. When it had suited him, Ethan had been a master at hiding his tracks. It was only as his game neared the end that he became complacent, allowing himself to be caught on camera. She glanced down at the table, catching sight of the paper shopping bag sitting on the floor next to her chair. Oh, wait a minute. I almost forgot about the reason I asked you to meet me here, she told him. She picked up the bag, your t-shirt and shorts, freshly laundered. He accepted the bag of clothing he loaned her at Neil's house, placing it back on the floor beside him. And there's one more thing, she said. I wanted to tell you that I'm taking your advice. At the hospital when Shane was in surgery, when she had the fleeting wish that she'd never been born, Ashley had realized she was here on this earth for a reason. Now she felt certain she knew her life's purpose. There were thousands of Ethans in the world, and thousands of innocent people who needed protection from them. Ashley was determined to make sure the victims received justice. I've made a decision to enroll in the police academy. I want to become a detective. It's a lot of work. You sure you're ready? She smiled. I'm more than ready. And that's the end of Let Me Go. Okay. Whew, let me take a breath for a minute. Okay, so my review on this book is 5 stars, okay? Out of 5 stars. Because this author, Kate Bold, had me from beginning to end. I was up, I was down, I was like rooting for Ashley, but then I was like, I don't know, because girl, where's your common sense? She wrote this book so well that it just had me. So me and my aunt have been reading and listening to this book, and we were doing all of plot twists and what's going to happen and stuff like that. And my plot twist her plot twist first. She said Ashley had to have contacted somebody, because ain't no way she went out there by herself without letting nobody know. And at first, we both was like, but they didn't say it. So we were like, no, she didn't. So she did do it by herself. But then my aunt also said she had to. And then today when I was thinking about it, I was like, she had to tell somebody. And then I was like, what if she was recording his confession so, it could be on tape? So that was one of my plot twists. But as you can see, the plot twist was she did tell somebody. So that goes to my aunt, because she definitely said that. And I'm so proud of Ashley. I mean, I was putting myself in her shoes, right? And I'm like, oh, I wouldn't have been able to do any of the things that she did. But in the end, if I think about it, she was a very strong individual, even though I felt like she didn't have common sense at times and she was doing things very impulsive and crazy. But that's just something, that's just me. That was my feelings, like I wouldn't have done it. But this was a really good book. So I'm not going to delay it anymore. And there are, I think, 6 books in this series. And let me see if it has it. Okay, let's see. I'm not gonna read. This is where I'm gonna stop because this book had me, okay? And you can find all of the rest of the books on Amazon. And it is Let Me Live, Let Me Breathe, Let Me Forget, Let Me Escape, and it was another one. I don't see the other one up here, but anyway, there's 6 in a series. This is book 1, and I think the next one in line is Let Me Live, but I'm not sure. So you're gonna have to do your own research if you're interested in this. So if you listen to this book with me as I read it, there's 2 things I want to know, because I'm going to continue reading books. The first thing I want to know is, me reading on camera, did you like it? Or it doesn't matter. You would prefer, or do you have a preference, like me not being on camera versus me being on camera, or it doesn't matter? Because it doesn't matter for me either. And the second one is, what did you think? How were you feeling if you listened to this book? How were you feeling? Like, did you feel the up and downs? Were you concerned for Ashley? Did you think that Ethan was going to get caught or go back to jail? Were you surprised that Ashley killed him? So yeah, that's something else. And let me think. Anything else I want to know? I want to know if you plan on reading anything else in the other books in this series, or anything else by her. Oh, one more thing I want to know. No, I don't want to know that. I'm gonna put a poll up because I think I need to read a romance after this one, because she didn't have my nerve shot. I was just up and down a lot. So with that said, this is the end of Let Me Go. And until my next book, see you later. Bye.